All right, here we are yet again for another edition of NBA Fantasy Baller DFS edition. It is February the 27th, 2017, and this is brought to you by ResearchFantasy.com. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about our 3 favorite plays of the day, and we're going to give you 3 value plays as a special bonus for listening to us on YouTube. Go ahead and subscribe to the podcast, videocast, whatever you want to call it. Pure entertainment is what I hope you find it, and I hope it helps you make some money. So let's start things off with Karl-Anthony Towns of the Minnesota Timberwolves going up against the Sacramento Kings. Cat right now is 19-2 on FantasyDraft, 10-9 on FanDuel, 10-8 on DraftKings. So there's no question about it. The price is up there. He's one of the most expensive plays on the night that you're going to find. But what a situation. I mean, since DeMarcus Cousins has left, Sacramento has just been giving it up to the center position. We just watched Frank Kaminsky put up over 40, somewhere between 40 and 45 fantasy points, depending on the site you used. And I don't think any of us are going to sit here and try to play the comparison game between Frank Kaminsky and Karl-Anthony Towns. There's a huge talent difference. So I would put that 45 points as my floor, just in case things got a little bit crazy. I don't see this game being a blowout. Last I checked, Vegas had this as a -5 for Minnesota. Being on the road, that would be about a -8 on their home court. I think it's going to be around that, but I think you're still going to see the starters get their usual allotment of minutes. With no Zach LaVine, the usage for Towns and Wiggins have been out of control. There's just no one they're going to be able to put on him. Costa Koufis, Skal, Labasierre, Willie Cauley-Stein, Anthony Tolliver. None of those guys are going to be able to shut Karl-Anthony Towns down. I'm looking at him tonight to put up another 60-plus point outing. I think he's the best guy to build your lineups around. I'm going to shoot next, surprisingly, to Isaiah Thomas, who has not been one of my favorite players over the past several weeks. Once his price hit around that 10K mark, it was all downhill from there. He started to underperform, and you saw a lot of outputs in the high 30s, and that's just not going to get it done at that price. That's just bluntly put. Even at 9,300 on FanDuel and 16,000 on FantasyDraft, you're still needing about 47, 48 points. I think he's capable of it. I'm targeting him specifically on DraftKings, 8,700 with that 3-point bonus in effect. I have him coming in between 47 and 50 points tonight. That matchup is going to be chock full of fantasy points at the point guard position. It is well known that neither Isaiah Thomas nor Dennis Schroeder play any level of defense whatsoever, so I'm expecting big games out of both of them. I prefer Isaiah Thomas just because he can get hot. We've seen it averaging 20-some points at times in the fourth quarter. I just think he's going to get really, really healthy tonight and back on track. Let's wind things down with Carmelo Anthony of the New York Knicks up against the Toronto Raptors. Really had a lot of difficulty deciding if I was going to put DeRozan in here. It's just come out that LeBron James is still sick. That's what happens. I live in Northeast Ohio. I've been sick. I'm having a hard time push through this. That's what happens when it's 75 degrees on a Friday and it's 30 degrees the next day. It just happens. Your system can't deal with that much of a drastic change, so you end up getting sick. If LeBron's out, Kyrie makes an excellent play, but I really like this matchup here for the Knicks and the Raptors. I thought about putting DeRozan here because of how well he's been playing without Lowry, who's presumably out tonight. I think I want to focus on Anthony in that matchup. I think it's going to be high scoring. The Raptors coming off a back-to-back set that was very closely contested against the Blazers last night. I think they're going to have a little bit of wear and tear on them. I think New York's going to hang in this. Wouldn't be shocked to see Carmelo hit that 50 fantasy point mark. His shot was falling like crazy on Saturday night against the Sixers. I see no reason why it doesn't continue here. Up next for our 3 value plays, let's start it off with who will be still a very popular value play in Cory Joseph. His price has come up to 10-2 on FantasyDraft, 5,200 on DraftKings, still at 4,400 on FanDuel though, so he's an easy plug and play. Needs 22 points to hit value on that site. He can do that in his sleep, so he's 100% lock for me there. You gotta start thinking on some of the other sites though. He's not exactly a plug and play, especially if we think we can get value at other positions. But I think he's in a good spot again. New York, not playing defense. This is potentially the best matchup that he's seen. It just depends on how you feel about things. I think he's in for at least 25 fantasy points. I just range him 25 to 30, which keeps him just on my radar for fantasy draft, on my radar for sure for DraftKings, and an absolute lock on FanDuel. Now I'm going to change it up, and I think where the masses are going to go with Willie Cauley-Stein yet again, I'm going to veer left, and I'm going to go with Skal Labasierre of the Sacramento Kings against the Minnesota Timberwolves. Skal has been good. He's looked really, really good. He's a dynamic basketball player, and I think he's going to have a good second half of the season. He's priced at 6,600 on FantasyDraft, 3,600 on FanDuel, 3,400 on DraftKings. He's had 20 and 25 fantasy points in the first two games since the break. There's no reason to think that he can't hit 21 points against the Timberwolves, putting him at almost 7 times value on both FanDuel and DraftKings. Excellent play. I think you could get a 4 times out of him on FantasyDraft, which is huge. So he's another guy on my radar who I'm going to be using a lot in my tournament lineups. Lastly, we're going to hit the Minnesota Timberwolves one more time, and we're going to go with Tyus Jones. And I know there's a debate I constantly go through, and this debate is, how cute are you being, Nick? Exactly how cute are you trying to be in this situation? You know, Tyus Jones is not a guy that's been consistent by any stretch of the imagination. He's minimum price across the board. No matter where you're playing him, you're not paying above minimum price. The usage and the minutes are a big question. Lance Stevenson not with the team anymore. Tom Thibodeau has run with him down the stretch the past 2 games, and he's put up fantasy outings near 20 points on FanDuel, just slightly over on DraftKings, so he's got a floor where he's at like 5-6x. Very risky, but I do think that there's enough upside there, and I think this game could go to his advantage because if Thibodeau likes him and he's using him down the stretch, then you know he's safe. But if the game turns into a blowout, it's likely that he'll see time too. So I think you kind of got like a best of the both worlds situation there. I always look for stuff like that when I'm trying to pick out my value plays. I know that we've veered a little bit from the conventional tonight with Tyus and Skal Labasierre. There's a ton of risk attached to them. But if they both hit 22, 23 fantasy points and they've allowed you to build in Isaiah Cat and Carmelo into your lineups and those guys all exceed 50 fantasy points, you're in for a nice night. So with that, I invite you to come over to our site, researchfantasy.com. Make sure to subscribe to our NBA updates. We send those out every day with our picks, our advice, exclusive stuff, some lineups, just a variety of things to get you started with your preparation for the day. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast. Like us on Facebook at Research Fantasy. Follow us on Twitter at Research and Win. And stay tuned tomorrow for our next set of picks.